Okay, so we are live. We're probably going to wait for a bit and let people join in. Great to see people here again. For anybody that wants the full experience of the webinar, as in being able to participate in polls and these type of things, it is important that you actually download Zoom app. If you have signed in from your web browser, you're only going to be able to do a limited amount of activities. Yeah. So yeah, I think we should probably get started. So welcome everybody to the second ever live webinar hosted by War on Cancer. This is going to be 30 minutes in total, and today we are focusing on the topic of relationships during cancer. So I'm here again with the phenomenal Dag Härdfeldt. Dag is a licensed psychologist working at Kry or Livy. The app has two names depending on where you're from. It is a medical app doctor. And just for information, Kry Livy only has their therapeutic feature available in Sweden and in France right now. Dag also works in primary care and has extensive experience treating newly diagnosed cancer patients. And I think, hold on, there we go. I was just informed that Dag wasn't in the screen. I think you are now. Yeah, I'm sorry. So some practical information. Just make sure if you want to have the full experience to rejoin by the Zoom app for questions and being able to participate in the poll. And again, for this webinar, we have received a bunch of questions. Thank you so much. We will be covering those questions towards the end of the session. And if you have any questions during this webinar, make sure to shoot them out and we'll try to incorporate them or take them towards the end as well. So going into relationships and cancer, and I think I can just talk a bit from my experience. Relationships really change during at least for me, changed during my years of going through cancer. And I think the one that changed the most was probably the one with my loved ones in the form of my parents. So I was living in London. I was 28 when I was diagnosed, and I felt quite independent. And I definitely had not expected to have to move back to live with my parents or stay with my mom. So in one way, this whole cancer treatment really intensified the relationship I had with my parents and especially my mother, which also, it made me feel forced to, it wasn't voluntary for me. So that made things a bit complicated. But then on the other hand, my relationship also with both my parents deepened quite a lot thanks to this experience. I think we got a chance to really meet each other at a more adult level or adult age and really reconnect and connect in whole new ways that I wasn't able to connect beforehand. So for that, I'm very thankful. And I mean, that was the most, I think, the relationship that I saw the most changing. But then I also saw change when it comes to friends. I did experience a lot of, some friends that I expected to really become a huge part of the support network, they just faded away. It is a term called cancer ghosting. Whilst other friends that weren't perhaps the closest one were surprisingly involved and became really good support. So some of my friends or the friends that ghosted, they're no longer friends of mine in a way. So it became a natural filtering process. But I mean, it's safe to say that relationships is a huge part of going through cancer, and it's a massively broad term as well. I mean, you have so many different kinds of relationships. You have colleagues, your friends, romantic partnerships, business partnerships, and loved ones. And in this webinar, we're going to focus in on relationships with your loved one, as in your primary caregiver, and talk more about that. So let's get down to it. And I guess first of all, Welcome, welcome, Dag. How's it going?
It's going all right. Thank you, Fabian, and thank you very much for having me back on your platform. It's an honor to be here. And yes, and I agree with you. Relationship is it's a very broad term, which of course makes it a very difficult topic to discuss in general term.
Actually, let me before I just realized that we're going to send out a poll before we start talking. So we would like to know just before we start this. So this is a poll. It's now live. Have you noticed a change in your relationships due to cancer? Sorry for interrupting you, Dag.
No, yes, I'm very interested in the results as well. So that's great that it came out.
Yeah. So far, 100% says yes.
Yeah.
Not too surprising. So we're going to end the poll there. And the results are here. So yeah, everybody has noticed changes.
And this confirms a lot. Sometimes cancer is referred to as a family experience, meaning it seldom affects just an individual. It affects a system of individuals. And it strikes the individual who gets the cancer in a certain way, and it strikes the loved one to that individual in a different way. And it changes the dynamic between this relationship, and the roles in the relationship may change as well. And I'm going to elaborate a bit on that further down. Now, I would like to because it's such a difficult topic to discuss, especially trying to give out advice that everybody can use in order to improve their relationship, because each and every relationship is like a completely unique thing. And what was wonderful one type of relationship may lead to a disaster in another type. Yeah. So, but on the other hand, just stating that it all depends won't do any good either. So what I will try to do is focus this discussion on a couple of key concepts that objectively have been proven to improve the alliance between two individuals. And the general theme will be understanding each other, understanding how cancer affects relationship, understanding how you can make yourself understood, but also how to express understanding to others. I will try to cover some common mistakes that usually hinder understanding, and hopefully each listener can take this increased knowledge about the power of understanding and apply it to their individual setting and improve the relationships.
Hopefully, yeah.
So, let's start with trying to understand how cancer can in general affect the relationship between two human beings or more. And this is a very important part of the process, because one of the key necessities for an alliance between persons is basic understanding of each other's situation, context, and premise. Two persons who can't understand what the other is going through or are unable to express that understanding, they're going to have a very difficult time managing support and cooperation. And you mentioned a bit of this, Fabian, that it wasn't maybe the easiest thing to find a functional cooperation between your parents, but you managed to find a way eventually, it sounded like.
Yeah, sort of. I was quite annoyed for long periods of time because I felt that they were too nurturing. Yes. And it became overwhelming, which I fully understand, but I was still pissed off about it.
Yes, and I heard that transition from a lot of other patients. And this brings us to one of the biggest changes cancer can create between individuals. It can cause a transition and shifts in the roles that we are used to. A mother who is used to play the role of provider of the family and to be the one who takes care may be forced into a role of someone who receives care if she is struck by cancer. And vice versa, a partner, friends, children who are used to rely on that mother may be forced into a role where they are the caregiver, where they have to take care of her.
Yeah.
And especially now with medical advances had made it so that it's easier to perform parts of cancer treatment in the home. You have shown that in the later ages, there's a much greater involvement and responsibility for family and friends. And as a psychologist in general, I'm very aware of how incredible, difficult and painful and straining role changes can be for every person, no matter what. And especially if that role change has been forced upon you, it's involuntarily. You didn't choose to go home to your parents. That wasn't your first-hand choice. You were forced into it. So this is one of the first key of understanding I really want to emphasize that it's perfectly normal, maybe even inevitable, to feel irritation, anger, resentment towards your loved ones, both as a patient and as someone close to a patient.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this as well, that you felt there were not only positive feelings regarding how nurturing your parents were, there were some negative feelings there as well.
A lot of them, and I think I was a pain in the ass as well as a patient, because I was, I don't know, because I was going through so many, like taking so many drugs and stuff, I got a bit aggressive, I became very demanding, and I think I had very little understanding from my end for what they were going through at the time, I remember. And I think I can see that clearly now. So I'm sure they were pissed off with me as well.
And that rings a lot of bells with a lot of stories I heard, spoken with people, many in your situation, where they, children who are forced to take care of their parents, and they can experience immense irritation and frustration with this, but they're also feeling incredibly guilty for having these feelings, because they think, why am I complaining when my parents is the one who are suffering from cancer and having it worse? Yeah. And also vice versa, like that you can be incredibly annoyed with the person running around your house, taking care of you, being nurturing, and you may feel this guilt that, am I being ungrateful? Why do I feel so much irritation to one who's only helping me?
So, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, so in order to make it a bit more tangible, how can we approach this? Like, yeah. So what are some sort of tangible tools and advice you can give to just kind of solve this?
And very good. Quick. Let me ask, how did you solve it? How did you speak about the irritation between us? Did you feel that you could express this irritation, or did you try to struggle, keep it to yourself? I shouldn't feel this way.
No, I think I felt entitled to be a pain in the ass, and I also felt entitled because I remember this, and I felt that, well, I'm the one going through cancer. They're just going to have to understand that I'm not the most grateful person right now, and I can sometimes be very aggressive. So I think they became quite very. It just, I mean, I don't feel bad about it, but I think it just became one of those relationships where I was allowed to do or behave in any way I wanted, and they kind of just adjusted to that. They were very understanding.
So there, you said the key word yourself. You said it became a safe zone with acceptance, where you could behave how you wanted to without feeling judged or guilty or inhibited, because they understood what you went through.
Yeah, but maybe they should have communicated with me, or perhaps I should have been more understanding of them.
Yes, and this, if I bring it back to the question, how can we more tangible approach this? I think it's important to remind yourself that even though it feels like the irritation and frustration is directed to a person, what we really are angry about is this role transition that we've been forced upon. We have this anger, we have this frustration towards the situation. But human beings are built in such a way that we almost always experience our feelings in relationship to another person. So they become the kind of catalysts of all the negative emotions.
Yeah.
So partly we should remind ourselves, I'm angry at the situation, not the person.
Yeah.
Now, the second part, there are proven methods of how you most effectively can get rid of negative emotions. And one of the most important requisites that needs to be fulfilled is you need to be able to verbalize the emotion, give it to a person, and that person must be able to accept it, validate it, and don't try to fight it.
Yeah.
So,
and this goes for both the patient, as in the person in treatment, and also the loved one.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Precis. And you described maybe I should have allowed my parents to complain a little more about how difficult it was for them.
Yes, or how much of a pain in the ass I was.
Yes, in the pain of the ass, if you want. So that is something I would like to encourage everybody to talk with your partners, that it's important that we are able to express the frustration with each other's. It doesn't mean that we judge each other or that we are, but we do it in order, because this is the most effective way to get rid of the tension.
Yeah.
And so, and if it's too, like, sometimes that's not always possible, it might be too intense to do it with the person enabled. And then I really suggest you try to seek out a therapist or something, because it works as a kind of surrogate. If you can't express your irritation with your partner, then you can do it in the confines of the therapy room.
Yeah. Okay, so if we are to separate, because I want us to provide some answers specifically for people in treatment and specifically for the loved ones. There must be some kind of difference, because there's one person that is sick, like going through a severe physical illness, which is cancer, and the other one is not sick, at least on a physical level. Mm-hmm. Are there things that a loved one should think about specifically, and the other way around?
Absolutely, and it's good that you emphasize that. When I referred to before that you called it a family experience, it is a battle, a tragedy that strikes two people, but it doesn't strike them the same way. The loved ones and the one with cancer are faced with very different kinds of battles. And I think a common mistake, what most people do, is that they are comparing the battles between each other. There this sort of comparative thoughts. Who has it worst? Am I allowed to feel overwhelmed in my battle because there is another one who has it more difficult?
That must go very much for the loved one, I think.
Yes, very much for love. And there's also a lot of guilt and shame for having the feelings that you have.
Yeah.
In that.
How can I deal with that? How can I deal with that as a loved one then?
Then I would do this. What you can do is that I think both parties can train their ability to express their needs to each other.
Yeah.
This is very important in order to. And because by doing this, you also emphasize the different kind of needs that arises, And when it comes to that, then this is a useful tool. I would like to give a concrete, useful communication advice that both can use in order to, and that we have we have what we call two kinds of languages.
Yeah.
We have an emotional language and we have a rational, like practical language. And a breakdown in understanding and communication usually arises when we confuse these two languages with each other. Like a very simple example would be if I am telling my wife to not put so much salt in the food, like whatever. What I'm doing there is a very practical, just objective approach. You shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
But she might interpret that as an emotional language where I'm criticizing her for her contribution to the housework. And then it becomes a fight. And for people with cancer, like for instance, where they might experience excruciating pain, like immense amount of pain, they might feel the need to complain a lot about their pain, because that's what we do. If it hurts, we need to complain about it.
Yeah.
Now, usually when we complain about pain, what we want to achieve with that, we just want to create an understanding. I'm hurting.
Yeah.
We want the other person to understand, I'm fighting right now, it's difficult. We don't want the person to come up with fixes. No. So this is one thing, like the one with the cancer can say, that because humans have a tendency, when one person complains, we tend to instinctively respond. We're trying to fix it.
Look for solutions. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And this becomes a common struggle where the loved ones say, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix it. Why does it keep complaining about it? So specify what kind of language you are using and what do you want to achieve from it. It can be as simple as saying, look, I'm having an awful day today. Today I'm going to complain a lot. Now, I don't want anything from you. I just want you to let me complain.
Yeah.
Don't feel stressed that you have to fix it or do anything.
Okay, I think that is good advice. That's something that a lot of people can, take with them. We have a live question here.
Yes.
Which is, we kind of have covered it, but should the caregivers not be taken care of too? Why should a cancer patient be given so much understanding?
An excellent question. And you're right, it revolves around what we discuss further. It's wrong to put them in the same like clump.
Yeah.
They are two individuals who are suffering from and fighting very different battles. And we shouldn't really compare them, and we shouldn't just focus all support on one person. It is a systematic damage. So, and I agree. Sometimes I think there should be more visibility to the kind of battle the loved ones experience.
Yeah. Thank you. I agree as well, definitely. And I hope, thank you for the question.
Yes, I wish we had more time to elaborate upon it.
We're going to plow forward here because we have more questions to cover. So one that came from before. I'm a youth cancer patient, and I'm wondering how I can cope with grieving parents.
Okay. Yeah. Now, if I'm reading if I'm reading between the lines here correctly, then I'm assuming you who asked the questions are not entirely pleased with your parents' approach regarding the situation. And this brings us to another practical tool we can use in order to help cope with persons in our surrounding that we might need or wish that they could change their approach. And this tool, it's very easy to learn, but it's quite difficult to master. It's basically, we call them I statements. Mm-hmm. And it's basically just a rule that of communication that states you can only express yourself in statements of I, such as I feel you're not helping, instead of you're completely worthless, or I feel anger towards you. But on such a basic level, it's practically useless, because it can be abused. Like you can say just, I feel you're an idiot, and then we're back again. What you need to do is that you need to formulate your statement so that you only speak to such things that you for certain know is true, and that doesn't put the other person in a defensive state.
Yeah.
And allow me to exemplify in the context of this question. Let's say, hypothetically, let's say that your parents' approach now with grieving it's not helping you. On the other hand, it's hindering you. And saying something in an I statement in this would be, the way you are approaching me right now is making me irritated. I'm not sure why, but it's not helping me.
Yeah.
It's a difference between that and saying, God, stop it, you guys, you're so annoying. Because when you say it like that, the focus becomes on the other person. They start thinking, am I annoying? Is it right for them to tell me this? But if you tell it like an I statement that can't be disputed, that is just, I feel like this, then you force the focus to come on your understanding.
Yeah.
So what I would like to recommend you is that try to make your parents understand how their approach is affecting you by using I statements.
Wonderful.
Be open about if their approach motivates you, inspires you, or have the opposite effects. And this advice, it can be extended to the whole area of relationship. I statements is a very powerful tool for creating understanding. So I hope they listen to you.
I hope so too. Thanks for that answer and for the question. Second question, I have prostate cancer, and since I got the diagnosis, I feel my wife is shutting me out. There's a massive wall between us. What can I or we do?
Yeah, well, as you understood so far, I'm an advocate for creating understanding.
Yeah.
And what you're describing in this question is a rift of lack of understanding that grows between the two of you. And it's difficult to make an assessment of the reasons behind this wall. But from my experience, a sudden silence between two parties is usually the result of emotional avoidance. Maybe for some reason, one party feels the need to distance themselves emotionally. And the most effective way to do that is not to speak, like shut someone out. Very common technique and very effective. Now, emotional avoidance, it doesn't have to be bad. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes we need it to figure out what we're feeling.
Yeah.
But if it goes on for too long, it's almost definitely become harmful. And it's also kind of a rabbit hole. Like the deeper you go into it, the more difficult it is to get it out, because the brain goes, I have a lot of untouched feelings there, and I don't have the energy to go into them right now. I think we can all relate to this. Quickly, what we do when we try to break emotional avoidance is the importance of taking small steps. So in this case, I would recommend maybe just starting by addressing the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
It can be like a small thing, like saying, honey, we're having this wall right now between us. Yeah. I don't know how to fix it. We don't have to start right away. But I just want to say that I feel this wall, and it's there, and I wish for it to go away. And that can be enough. Excuse me, what did you say, Fabian?
Small baby steps.
Small baby steps, and ensure that we just break the rabbit hole by a small step upwards.
Good. Third question. I just started dating after cancer, and I really like the person that I'm seeing. I'm wondering, when is the right time to tell somebody you are still in treatment from cancer or for cancer?
yeah, that's a difficult dilemma. And I think the cliche answer would be anytime is the right time. And if this person likes you, it shouldn't matter. But I think it's a bit more complicated like that.
We don't like cliche answers, though.
No, no. So you can look at it like that. I think creating attachment, a bond to another person, it's kind of like you're weaving a rope.
Yeah.
And at first the rope is fragile and it might break easily if we put too much pressure or like drop a big piece of information about ourselves early. But if it's the longer time we have to weave this rope, the more it can withstand. Now you're describing a difficulty here. You don't know when to drop it. If you drop it too soon, maybe it's too much to handle and it will interfere with the bonding. But if you drop it too late, the other person might feel betrayed, like I should have gotten to this information before I started to WoC. So it's
I don't think I don't think that they should feel entitled in that way. I think my illness is my private thing, and I don't think I'm required to talk about it until I feel comfortable with the person.
And that is absolutely with 100% your entitlement, right? Just as I think this is when another person's, when they decide to commit to a person,
yeah,
I can imagine they feel a sense of entitlement to know what they're committing to.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I think this is just, I think, how human beings work. And committing to someone where it might be a process of losing this person might be very, very scary for a person who has experienced loss before. So in the question, like the answer to this question is, I think when you feel that either you or the other person are close to committing to each other for real,
yeah,
this is when you should consider dropping this information. But just as Fabian said, as you said, there is no right and wrong here. You are in no way an obligation to share this information. It's and we can't give more specific advice than that. But
I think that was good. It's sort of date 5 or whatever, when you're beginning to feel maybe I don't know how fast, if there's a standard for how fast you run towards commitment, but at some point you're going to end up with feeling, okay, it's about time we commit.
Yes, and I agree, it's different. For some people it's the second date. For some it's the 1 year in, when you notice a toothbrush in the morning. So that can be a moment. So try to look for that moment where you're close to committing, and then you can evaluate.
Love it. And with that, we're coming to a close, sadly. It's been such a tremendous honor to have you with us here again, Dag. Hoping that we'll see you more in the future. For information for all the viewers, so the next webinar is on Tuesday, the 27th. So in a couple of days at 5 p.m. and we'll be covering skincare tips during cancer treatment with the organization Look Good, Feel Better. So sign into the WoC on Cancer app to find out more information, and also we'd love to know or get questions beforehand. Either send them to the WoC on Cancer app account, which is @WoC in the WoC on Cancer app, or drop us an email at hello@woconcancer.com. And with that, I want to thank you, Dag.
Thank you. Thank you all the listeners for your questions. It's a pleasure to talk to you.